I was turning the old iron key, my grandfather's key, when it happened. The lock clicked, the gate swung shut, and HOA President Karen Morrison exploded like a firecracker soaked in gasoline. "You can't lock this gate, I have rights," she shrieked, waving her clipboard like it was a royal decree. Behind her, 12 of her invited guests stood with coolers, folding chairs, fishing rods, and the confidence of people who thought my lake belonged to them. But it didn't. It never had. This lake, 3.2 acres of quiet water and family memories, has belonged to my family since 1947. And yet here stood Karen, acting as if I'd just barricaded a public park. She jabbed a finger at me, phone already dialing 911. "You're trespassing on community property," I smiled just a little. Because when that gate locked, I knew something she didn't. I wasn't just shutting out her guests. I was shutting down the biggest lie she'd been telling this neighborhood for 3 whole years. If you've ever inherited something precious, something soaked in memories and the weight of your family's history, you'll understand why that moment hit me differently. It wasn't just a gate. It wasn't just a patch of grass or a calm stretch of water. It was the last living piece of my childhood, my grandfather, and everything he taught me. And watching Karen and her parade of uninvited guests treat it like a public picnic spot that lit a fuse I didn't even know I still had. But to explain how things spiraled to the point where Karen was screeching like a car alarm with emotions, I need to rewind to the beginning, just a few weeks before the gate incident. I'm Michael Brennan, 62 years old, retired real estate attorney, though retirement is beginning to feel like a cruel joke. After my uncle passed 6 months ago, he left me his house, his land, and most importantly, the lake. Not a pond. Not a retention basin, a lake. 3.2 acres feeding into a creek surrounded by old pines and quiet mornings. It was the kind of place you don't just own, you inherit it like a story, like a responsibility. My grandfather, Walt Brennan, had bought this place back in 1947, worked 2 jobs, one at a mill, one repairing farm equipment, to save every penny. He used to bring me here when I was a kid, hand me a worn-out fishing pole, and tell me the lake taught patience better than school ever could. I believed him then, and I still do now. The house itself sits just outside the HOA lines of Lakeview Meadows, a fact I confirmed twice before moving in. The HOA boundary stops 200 feet short of my property. Legally speaking, I am HOA-proof, immune, a sovereign nation. Or so I thought. On my first week, I met the queen of that kingdom, HOA President Karen Morrison. She appeared on my porch like a mother-in-law in a sitcom, except much louder, much blonder, and armed with a clipboard thick enough to use as a weapon. She didn't even knock. I opened the door to find her standing there with a smile so tight it looked painful. "Welcome to the community," she said, extending a packet of papers toward me. "These are the rules and expectations for all homeowners in Lakeview Meadows." I raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, my house isn't part of Lakeview Meadows." Her smile didn't move. "Well, technically no, but we encourage all neighboring homeowners to follow our guidelines. It's part of being a good neighbor." She said good neighbor the same way a judge says guilty. I flipped through the packet: lawn height regulations, approved paint colors, mailbox styles, completely useless to me. "Thanks, but I won't be participating." The smile slipped a fraction of an inch. She tried again. "Well, we also manage community events at the lake." "My lake," I corrected. "Lakeview Lake," she insisted. "It's not named that. It's on my deed." Her lips pressed into a line so thin it could slice fruit. That was our entire interaction. 5 minutes long, no shouting, no conflict, just a quiet understanding that Karen did not like being told no, and I had just told her the biggest no she'd probably heard in years. I went on living my quiet, retired life, not realizing Karen was already plotting something, or maybe she'd been planning this long before I arrived. Fast forward to the Saturday, everything went sideways. I left at 7:30 a.m. to pick up lumber and new fixtures from the hardware store in town. I was gone for less than 2 hours. When I came back and turned onto Lakeview Drive, I immediately saw its smoke, rising above the tree line like a small campfire. Then came the sound music thumping through portable speakers, the kind of classic rock playlist everyone claims to like but nobody actually listens to. As I pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped. Down the slope beside the water, 12 strangers had set up what looked like a full-fledged lakeside festival. Folding tables, coolers, 2 grills, lawn chairs, fishing rods poking into the water, kids running around. A teenage boy tossing beer cans into a trash bag like it was a basketball hoop. And in the center of it all, standing tall with crossed arms and a triumphant smirk, was Karen. I parked, got out of the truck, and just stared for a moment. It was surreal, like walking into your house and finding a family of raccoons hosting a birthday party. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and hit record. If there's one thing my years as an attorney taught me, it's this: always get evidence. As I walked down the hill, the smell of grilled meat hit me first, followed by the zip of a fishing reel and the unmistakable cackle of people who believed the world belonged to them. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me." "Nothing." "Excuse me," I repeated louder. A few heads turned. Most didn't. Karen finally spun around, smiling like she'd been waiting for me. "There he is. Everybody, this is Mr. Brennan. He owns the house, but this lake is a shared resource." We were just getting started. I tightened my grip on the phone. "This is private property. You're trespassing. All of you need to leave." Karen laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, Michael. This lake has been used by our residents for years. Just because you inherited a house nearby doesn't mean you get to lock everyone out." "No easement exists," I replied. "Show me any document saying otherwise." Her smile flickered just for a second. Then she said, "I don't need to show you anything. We have records." "Then please present them," I said. "Until then, I need all of you to leave." One of the men stepped forward, beer in hand. "Come on, man. Don't be that guy." I stared at him. "I'm not being that guy. I'm the guy who owns the land you're standing on." That's when Karen pulled out her phone and stabbed her finger into the screen. "Fine, I'm calling the police. You're harassing HOA members, exercising their legal rights." I felt something strange, then not anger, not fear, just calm. The kind of calm a fisherman feels before the fish bites the hook. "Please do," I said. "I'd love for an officer to document the trespassing." 20 minutes later, Mark arrived. Seeing an old friend step out of a patrol car felt both comforting and ironic. Karen rushed over, talking so fast she barely breathed. "Officer, he's hostile, he's threatening us, he's blocking community access." Mark held up a hand. "Karen, slow down." Then he turned to me. "Mike, been a while." I shook his hand. "Sorry you had to come out for this. What's going on?" he asked. I kept it simple. My grandfather bought this land in 1947, 3.2 acres, private property. Nobody has permission to use this lake. Karen claims the HOA has rights but has no documentation. Mark raised an eyebrow at Karen. "Do you have easement paperwork, ma'am? Anything that shows legal access?" She hesitated. "It's on file. Do you have it with you?" "No," she snapped. I handed Mark my phone. "Here's my deed, recorded with the county. No easements, no shared access." Mark studied it, then sighed. "Karen, unless you can provide documentation, he's within his rights. Everyone needs to leave." It was like someone had popped a giant balloon. The energy shifted. People packed up, slowly muttering. Some glared at me. A woman hissed, "All this over a stupid lake." Karen walked to her car and pointed at me through the window. "You'll regret this. I have an entire community behind me." She wasn't wrong. I just had no idea how far that community would go, or how many lies she'd been feeding them for years. The afternoon after the police escorted Karen's community celebration off my lake was one of the strangest I've had in recent memory. You'd think I would have felt triumphant or vindicated after proving my ownership in front of a dozen trespassers and an HOA president with a god complex, but no. The only thing I felt was a dull, sinking weight in my chest. Not fear, not guilt, just the sense that something bigger had begun, and Karen wasn't the type to lose quietly. By the time the sun dipped low behind the pines, I was still pacing around the lake, looking at the crushed grass, scattered trash, and cigarette butts littering the shore. My grandfather once kept so clean you could kneel down and drink straight from the edge. They'd torn my no trespassing sign off the fence. Someone even scratched a little message into the bark of a tree, "HOA property." I ran my fingers over the carving and felt that same fuse from earlier spark again. No, something wasn't right. Karen didn't just assume the HOA had rights to my lake. She spoke with a kind of confidence that didn't match the facts. Most HOA presidents exaggerate authority, sure, but Karen had acted like she was reciting gospel, as if she expected me to already know my place. I pulled out my phone and called the one man who never missed a detail, Tom Daniels. He answered on the third ring, already annoyed. "It's Saturday, Mike. This better be good." "Tom," I said, staring out at the lake, "remember when I told you retirement was going to be boring?" He groaned loudly. "What happened? I think my HOA president is trying to steal my lake." "Ah," he said flatly. "Of course she is." By the time I finished explaining, Tom wasn't just annoyed, he was curious. And Tom being curious was always bad news for whoever he was investigating. "You want me to pull county records?" he asked. "Yes. Everything. Deeds, petitions, easements, filings, meeting notes, everything Karen Morrison has ever touched." "All right," he sighed. "I'll have it Monday. Don't do anything stupid." I laughed. "Define stupid." "With you? Not sure I can." After hanging up, the world felt unnervingly quiet. Just the night insects starting their chorus and the faint drip of lake water under the dock. I walked up the slope toward the old steel gate, the one my grandfather welded by hand in the early 60s, and held the cold, heavy key between my fingers. The same key that started this mess. I slid it into the lock. It clicked shut with a metallic finality that echoed louder than it should have. Then I hung a new sign. Private property violators will be prosecuted. When I stepped back from the gate, something shifted in the air. Not fear, resolve. The kind you don't earn until you've lived long enough to know what happens when you let bullies run unchecked. My grandfather always said, "You let someone take 1 inch, they'll come for a mile." Karen had already taken miles, years worth apparently. I went inside, made a pot of coffee, even though it was nearly 8 p.m., and opened my laptop to reread Texas Penal Code section 30.05 on criminal trespass. I knew what it said before I pulled it up. I'd quoted it enough times in court, but something about seeing it again black and white helped settle the knot in my chest. A knock on the door startled me. Not a gentle knock, more like someone slapping the door with their palm. I froze. Only one person I knew knocked like that. I opened the door slowly, and sure enough, taped to my screen door was an envelope. No name, no stamp, no return address. Just Michael Brennan scrawled in sharp, aggressive handwriting. Karen's handwriting. I tore it open and unfolded a single sheet of HOA letterhead, Notice of Violation Denial of Community Access Rights. You are hereby informed that your actions on November 4 constitute a breach of shared resource agreements. Immediate compliance is expected. Failure to comply will result in legal action. Signed, Karen Morrison, HOA President. I read it twice. Then I checked the date on my family deed 1947, 40 years before Lakeview Meadows HOA even existed. A humorless laugh escaped my throat. Karen really thought this piece of paper meant something. I set the notice on the table, made more coffee, and sat on my porch watching the lake glow under a rising moon. The calm surface shimmered, reflecting everything except the chaos waiting in my inbox. The next morning, Sunday, at 10 a.m., I stepped outside to get the mail. But before I reached my own mailbox, I noticed something strange. Cars slowed down when they passed my driveway. Not stopping, just creeping. Drivers craning their necks, some even lifting their phones to take pictures. One woman drove past twice. I felt a prickle of annoyance but kept my head down. That's when Gerald, my neighbor, 2 houses down, walked out to check his own mail. A quiet, old-fashioned gentleman. His wife had brought me a casserole my first week there. "Morning," I said. He cleared his throat. "Morning." Something was off in his tone, his posture, stiff eyes darting everywhere except toward me. "Everything okay?" I asked. Gerald shifted. "Look, I don't want to get involved, but people are talking," about what he sighed. Karen sent out a message. Said you threatened families who were using the lake. Said you called the cops on kids just trying to enjoy a community space. My jaw tightened. That's not what happened. He held up a hand. "I'm not saying it is. I'm just telling you what's going around. My wife is friends with Karen. If I were you, I'd stay out of it." He turned and walked away, without another word. And just like that, the weight in my chest doubled. I went back inside, opened my laptop, and began digging into the county property records. Hours passed as I combed through decades of filings. The deeper I went, the more the truth fought its way into the light. My grandfather's deed clear. My uncle's transfer clear. Taxes current. Boundaries unchanged. Then I found it. A petition filed 3 years ago by none other than Karen Morrison. She'd requested an easement for recreational lake access for the HOA. She submitted letters from residents claiming long-term use. She tried to push through an access point onto my land, but the county denied it. Flat out denied it. Their response was blunt. Petitioner has failed to demonstrate any legal basis for easement. Property in question is privately owned, no history of permitted public access. Dated 2 years ago. Karen knew. She'd always known. She just didn't care. As I leaned back in my chair, staring at the denial letter, a chill crawled up my spine, not because Karen lied, but because she lied so confidently. She wasn't just overstepping, she was building something. And I hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. When I finally pushed my chair back from the desk, the denial letter still glowing on my screen, a cold understanding settled in my chest. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Karen had tried, legally tried to take access to my family lake, And when the county shut the door in her face, she didn't stop. She simply changed tactics. I stared out the window at the water shimmering under the midday sun. My grandfather always said the lake was honest, you could see right to the bottom if you waited long enough. And now the bottom was finally coming into view. But I had a feeling the mud hadn't fully settled yet. I grabbed my phone and called Tom. He answered on the first ring. That was fast. What did you find? She applied for an easement, I said quietly. 3 years ago, county denied it. There was silence on the line. Then a low whistle. Well, Tom said that explains why she talked like she had the law on her side. She tried to get it and failed. Tom, why didn't she tell the HOA? Why lie about it? He sighed. Because admitting defeat doesn't fit the HOA president narrative. Power depends on perception, Mike, especially with a Karen. I rubbed my forehead. What do I do? Nothing yet. Let me dig further. If she tried legal routes, she might have tried illegal ones too. I hung up, but my stomach stayed twisted. Something was still off. Karen didn't strike me as the kind of person who spent years obsessing over lake rights purely for community enrichment. There was something else behind her: confidence, money, ego, or both. And that suspicion only grew stronger when my phone buzzed 10 minutes later. Unknown number, back off. Last warning, no signature. But the tone, the hostility dripping from every word, it had Karen's fingerprints all over it. I screenshotted it instantly, evidence. But if she thought a vague threat would scare me into silence, she severely underestimated me. I'd spent 15 years arguing against corporate lawyers who wore suits worth more than my truck. A text message from the queen of the cul-de-sac wasn't going to rattle me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Monday, my house phone rang at exactly 8:00 a.m. Tom never calls outside business hours unless he's found something important, I answered. Morning. Mike, he said, and I could hear the shuffle of papers on his end. You're going to want to sit down. I'm already sitting. I pulled your full property file. Deed is clean, yes. But then I checked HOA filings for the past 5 years. His voice tightened. Your HOA president has been busy, very busy. That sentence chilled me more than the November air. What did she do? I asked. She didn't stop with the denied easement, Tom said. A year after the county rejection, she started courting an investor. An investor for what? For a private fishing club, I blinked. A club on my lake. Oh, you haven't heard the best part yet, Tom continued. The investor's name is Ron Harper, CEO of Harper Leisure Group, a legitimate businessman. According to their emails, Karen pitched your lake as the centerpiece of a premium members-only fishing retreat. My stomach clenched. She doesn't own my lake. She told Harper she did. I felt my pulse spike. Tom continued. She described it as an exclusive 3.2 2-acre recreational asset under HOA management. She told him access rights were already secured. That's a lie. Yep, Tom said. And the worst lie is the document she gave him. My skin prickled. Tom. What document? A forged approval letter, he said bluntly. A fake easement approval from the county planning board. Convincing enough that Harper didn't question it. I sat back in my chair stunned. She forged county documents. Yes. Tom dropped his voice. That's felony territory. I covered my eyes with my palm. This was bigger than trespassing, bigger than HOA drama. This was fraud, government fraud. And she had dragged my property into the middle of it. How much did Harper invest? I murmured. $200,000 up front, with another $50,000 in projected fees later. I swore under my breath. He gave her $250,000 based on fake access rights to my lake, Tom sighed. Yep. And according to the contract, Karen's LLC Lakeview Recreation Partners would receive a 30% annual management fee. That's $300,000 a year if the club opened. I sat in stunned silence. All Karen needed was one thing: access to my land. And when she couldn't get it legally, she lied. She forged. She stole. Tom, I whispered, how does someone like her think she's going to get away with this? People like Karen don't plan escape routes, Tom said. They plan victory speeches. A surge of anger pushed me up from my chair. I began pacing, heart-pounding mind racing through every interaction I'd had with her, every forced smile, every sideways comment. Every moment she acted like the lake was already hers. This wasn't about HOA pride. This wasn't about community use. This was about money, real money, and a plan she'd been crafting for years. I stopped pacing. Tom, what else did you find? He flipped papers. Well, after the county denied her petition, she never told the HOA. Instead, she asked them for $15,000 for lake access improvements. No mention the easement was dead. She stole from her own neighbors, I whispered. Looks that way. And the HOA approved it. Oh yeah, unanimously. She's been their golden girl for years. I walked to the window and stared at the lake. Its still surface looked almost silver in the cool morning light. The same lake Karen was planning to turn into her personal cash machine. What's our next move? I asked. Not our next move, Tom corrected. Your next move. I can pull every document, every email, every forged letter. But this is your land. You decide how far you want to push. I took a slow, steady breath. Tom, I said, if she's been lying to her HOA members about rights to my property, they deserve to know. She'll deny everything, Tom warned. Not when I show them the evidence. Think carefully, he said. Going public means war. I think Karen declared war the moment she forged a government signature. Tom paused. Then I'll prepare a full evidence file. Do it. As we hung up, a strange calm washed over me. The kind of calm you get when you finally understand the rules of the game you've been dragged into. This wasn't about neighborly disputes anymore. This wasn't about a lake. This was about truth versus lies. About one woman's greed versus my family's legacy. Karen had built a house of cards, and she'd built it on my land. Now it was time to blow gently and watch the whole thing collapse. By Tuesday morning, the fog that had settled over the lake seemed to mirror the fog in my mind. Everything looked calm on the surface, but I knew something dangerous was swirling beneath. Karen wasn't just playing HOA games anymore, she was playing financial roulette with other people's money and using my land as the centerpiece. I sat on the back porch with my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed again. Tom. He never called twice in 2 days unless he found something big. Mike, he said, without even greeting me, you might want to brace yourself. I'm sitting down, I muttered. Go ahead. Remember how I told you Karen formed an LLC, Lakeview Recreation Partners? Yes. Well, I just pulled the filings. Pages shuffled on his end. She registered the LLC 18 months ago. Sole manager Karen Morrison. Purpose: management and development of recreational facilities and private membership clubs. Private membership clubs. I clenched my jaw. Tom, this is insane. She created a company to profit off my lake. She didn't just create it, he said. She used it. He continued flipping through paperwork. I got my hands on the contract between Karen and Ron Harper. Harper Leisure Group agreed to a long-term partnership. Karen's LLC would manage operations of the fishing club, while Harper's company would supply the capital and handle amenities. And by amenities, he added dryly, they mean anything from docks to cabins to a lakeside lodge. I nearly choked. Cabins? A lodge on my land? Yep, Tom said. According to the documents, Karen told Harper she had exclusive HOA-backed access rights. She pitched it as an investment guaranteed to boost property values, attract wealthy members, and generate six-figure profits annually. I stood up from the porch, heart pounding. Tom, how much did Harper pay her upfront deposit? $200,000. He paused. And an additional $50,000 for preliminary consulting and planning fees. I gripped the railing. So she took $250,000. Based on a forged approval letter. Correct, Tom said. Felony wire fraud. Possibly mail fraud, depending on how she sent documents. And that fake county approval letter, if she created it on a government template, that's additional charges? My mind was spinning. She's insane. She's ambitious, Tom corrected. And desperate. Big difference. I paced back and forth, trying to piece everything together. What does Harper think now? His attorney is reviewing the actual county records. Once he finds out the easement was denied and that the letter Karen provided is fake, he'll come after her with everything he's got. Good, I said through clenched teeth. Mike Tom continued, there's more. I stopped pacing. What now? I reviewed the HOA's internal meeting minutes. 4 months ago, Karen pitched a budget item, lake access improvements, $15,000. She told the board it was needed to finalize negotiations with the property owner. My jaw dropped. That property owner was my uncle. He declined. Exactly. But she didn't tell the HOA that. She also didn't tell them the county denied her petition. So she lied, I said. She lied. Tom echoed, and the HOA approved the funds unanimously. My stomach tightened. Did she provide receipts, invoices, anything? Some? Tom said. But the numbers don't add up. I cross-referenced them. Several invoices look suspicious. Non-existent companies, mismatched dates, inconsistent signatures. So she skimmed money from her own HOA, I whispered. It's looking that way, Tom confirmed. At minimum, misappropriation of funds. At worst, embezzlement. I leaned against the porch railing, feeling that cold November breeze cut through my shirt. This wasn't just about my lake anymore. Karen had lied to everyone, her neighbors, Harper, the HOA board. She'd built an entire empire on fake documents and fabricated authority. How many people know about this? I asked. Right now, just you, me, and probably Harper's attorney. But once the board catches wind, Tom, I interrupted, they don't know, do they? Not unless Karen told them, and so far she hasn't told them anything real. I took a long breath. We have to make this public. Slow down, cowboy, Tom said. You reveal this too early and Karen will deny everything, spin it as a misunderstanding, maybe even destroy evidence. He wasn't wrong. If we want this to stick, Tom continued, we gather everything. All documents, emails, invoices, forged letters. Then we reveal it in one blow, a presentation so ironclad she can't wiggle out. I frowned. And where do we do this presentation? You know exactly where, Tom said. At the next HOA meeting. My breath hitched. Karen's kingdom. Her stage. Her throne room. Where she felt untouchable. Tom, I whispered, that would destroy her. Good. That afternoon felt strange, like the air itself was charged with electricity waiting for something to break. I walked the trail around my lake thinking about everything Tom said. Every pine tree I passed felt like a silent witness. My grandfather used to walk the same trail, hands clasped behind his back, humming old country songs. I wondered what he'd say now. Probably something like bullies only win when good people stay quiet. I wasn't quiet anymore. By 3 p.m., I'd gathered every piece of paper I could find, my deed, old survey maps, my uncle's handwritten notes, even the gate key. Then I opened an email to Tom, attaching scans of everything. But before I hit send, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, I hear you're digging. Bad idea. My lip curled. Another threat. Another piece of evidence. This time I replied, every message you send is being added to a file. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Karen stayed quiet. Around 5 p.m., as I started dinner, I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Light, cautious footsteps. I opened the door. It was Helen, HOA treasurer. A small woman in her early 60s, gray hair in a bun, cardigan buttoned all the way up. She held a casserole dish in her hands like a peace offering. Mr. Brennan, she said softly, I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, I replied. Come in. She set the casserole down and folded her hands nervously. I heard there was an incident at the lake. That's one way to put it. She hesitated. I've been treasurer of the HOA for 6 years, and after Wednesday's meeting, I checked our financials. She pulled a folder from her bag. Mr. Brennan, something isn't right. My eyebrows lifted. What do you mean? She opened the folder, revealing spreadsheets, check stubs, receipts. 3 years ago, Karen requested $15,000 for lake access improvements. But when I reviewed the expenses, only $8,500 is accounted for. The remaining $6,500 is missing. Missing, just like Tom said. And there's more, Helen whispered. Karen has approved several smaller administrative expenses over the past 2 years. No board vote, no transparency. They total, she paused, swallowing hard, another $12,000. I exhaled slowly. Helen, Karen has been lying about more than the finances. She looked at me with wide eyes. What do you mean? I gestured toward the dining table. Sit down. I have something to show you. Over the next 30 minutes, I told her everything. The denied easement, the forged approval letter, the investor, the LLC, the money, hundreds of thousands. Helen's face went pale as she read each document I placed in front of her. She lied to all of us, Helen whispered. She stole from all of us. Will you help me expose her? I asked. Helen straightened in her chair. Mr. Brennan, the HOA board deserves to know the truth, and so does the entire neighborhood. She stood clutching her folder. I'll call an emergency board meeting. Tonight, we won't let her get away with this. As she left, the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the lake. The water looked darker now, deeper. A storm was coming, and for the first time since arriving here, I no longer felt alone. The night Helen left my house with her folders pressed tightly to her chest was one of the strangest evenings I'd had in years. After the door closed behind her, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the casserole she'd brought but no longer had an appetite for. The room around me felt too still, too quiet, like the air before a storm. The lake outside reflected the moonlight in long silver streaks across the surface, a beautiful reminder of what I was fighting for, and what people like Karen never understood. Some things come from family, not from power. I kept replaying Helen's expression in my mind. The betrayal, the hurt, the disbelief that the woman she'd worked alongside for years, the one hosting charity drives and block parties, had been lying to her face the entire time. I saw her hand shake when she turned the pages of those financial records, and in that moment, I realized something important. Karen didn't just cheat strangers. She cheated the people closest to her. At 9:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from Helen emergency board meeting in 20 minutes. Come quietly. You should hear what happens. I grabbed my coat and headed out. The November air hit cold against my cheeks, but it sharpened my focus. I walked the 2 blocks to Helen's house where 3 cars were already in the driveway. She met me at the door, eyes tense, and whispered, "They're in the living room. Just listen for now." Inside, voices were raised, agitated, confused, angry. I stopped in the hallway unseen and listened. Gary, one of the board members, spoke first. "Are you telling us Karen spent $15,000 without proper approval?" Helen didn't hesitate. "Yes, and it gets worse." Linda, another board member, sounded shaken. "Why would she lie about lake access? She told us negotiations were ongoing." Helen laid the papers down on the coffee table. "Because she wasn't negotiating. She never was. She was manipulating all of us." I could hear pages being flipped, the tense quiet broken only by the sound of disbelief. Gary muttered, "My God, how did we miss this?" "She counted on us missing it," Helen replied. "She made sure no one ever asked questions." There was a long pause before Linda spoke again, voice trembling with anger. "So what now? Confront her, demand explanations." "No," Helen said firmly. "If we confront her privately, she'll destroy evidence. We follow protocol. Tonight we vote." That vote was swift. I could practically feel the weight of it from the hallway. 3 out of 5 board members voted to suspend Karen's spending authority immediately. A small but monumental shift of power. Later, Helen showed me to the door and whispered, "This is the beginning. She knows something is wrong. She'll feel it." And she was right, because by midday on Wednesday, I saw Karen at her most unhinged. I was fixing the loose hinge on the back porch door when I heard the crunch of gravel in my driveway. When I turned there, she was pink cardigan, stiff posture, arms crossed, marching across my property like she owned the world. She didn't waste time. "What did you tell them?" she demanded. Her voice wasn't loud, it was sharp, splintered at the edges, desperate in a way she couldn't hide. I leaned casually against the porch railing. "Good afternoon to you too, Karen. Don't play games with me, Michael. The board is questioning my leadership. They're reviewing expenditures. They're asking for documentation." Her voice pitched upward. "You did this. You're trying to tear down our community." "Our community," I repeated. "Karen, you forged documents. You stole money. You trespassed. You lied to everyone." She stepped closer, eyes blazing. "You think you can humiliate me in front of the people I lead. You are making a huge mistake." "You made the mistakes," I said. "I'm just uncovering them." Her face twisted into something ugly, twisted pride mixed with boiling fear. "Back off," she hissed. "I mean it, Michael. That's the 3rd threat you've sent this week," I replied calmly, "and I've saved every single one." The flicker of fear in her eyes told me she finally understood she no longer controlled the narrative. She spun around and stormed to her SUV, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. As she sped away, I exhaled slowly, realizing something that struck me like a cold wave. Karen wasn't furious because she believed she was right. She was furious because she knew she was losing. The next day, Tom arrived at my house carrying 2 large boxes. "War chest," he announced as he set them down on my dining table. Documents spilled out, printed emails, county filings, the forged approval letter, financial spreadsheets, timelines. He spread them across the table methodically, each sheet building a fortress of truth around us. Every step of Karen's plan was documented, highlighted, and undeniable. Her offer to my uncle, her failed petition, her omission to the HOA, her misleading pitch to Harper, her formation of the LLC, the fabricated county letter, and finally the vanishing HOA funds. "This," Tom said, tapping the table, "is the end of her presidency. And the beginning of her problems?" I nodded. "The neighborhood will need to see it." "They will." While we worked, my phone buzzed again. 3 new messages. "You think this makes you a hero? You're ruining everything. You will regret this." I showed Tom. He photographed every message. "She's digging her own grave." By late afternoon, Helen joined us carrying her binders. Her hands shook, but her voice was firm. "I'm ready for Wednesday." "You don't have to do this alone," I told her. "I'm not," she replied. We rehearsed our presentation until the sun dipped low, foreshadowing the storm that would break the following evening. Outside Lakeview Meadows remained eerily still, but you could feel the community shifting. People stared longer. Some apologized. Some avoided eye contact. The neighborhood was dividing between truth and denial. As night fell, I walked down to the lake. The reflection of the stars trembled across the water. My grandfather once told me that truth is like that lake, still constant, unchanging. You can muddy it, you can disturb it, but eventually everything settles, and the bottom becomes clear again. On Wednesday, the bottom was about to be revealed. Tomorrow would be the night Karen Morrison's kingdom turned back into dust. Wednesday arrived with a strange heaviness in the air. I woke earlier than usual, long before the sun cut across the lake. The water was still glassy, reflecting the pale glow of morning like it was holding its breath. It felt like the calm before something decisive, like the entire neighborhood was bracing for impact without knowing exactly what would shatter first. I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, replaying every detail in my mind. Karen's threats, the forged documents, the money trail Helen uncovered, the fury in Harper's voice when he called. The HOA board quietly beginning to turn against their own president. This little lakeside community had no idea the extent of the storm that was about to break over their heads. Around 10 a.m., Tom arrived with the final binders. His truck tires crunched across the gravel, the sound strangely fitting like the opening notes of a battle march. When he stepped out, he carried 3 thick binders under one arm and a laptop bag under the other. "Ready for tonight?" he asked. "As ready as a 60-year-old man can be before taking down an HOA president," I replied. Tom smirked, but his eyes were serious. "Michael, this is going to be big." Inside, we spread everything across the dining table again, the binders, the forged letter, the HOA financial records, the email chains. Seeing all of it laid out together made Karen's scheme look even more calculated. She hadn't stumbled into wrongdoing. She hadn't made a mistake. She had constructed step by step an entire structure built on lies. She wanted power, Tom said quietly, tapping a page with his finger. More than that, she wanted a legacy, something she could control and profit from, and she was willing to steal from her neighbors to do it. "She picked the wrong lake," I said. Near noon, my phone buzzed again. Harper. His message was short: "I'll be there with my attorney." She won't walk away from this. I exhaled slowly. Harper wasn't coming out of vindictiveness. He was coming because Karen had conned him professionally, financially, and personally. People like him didn't tolerate being made fools of. And when they fought back, they did it with precision. By mid-afternoon, whispers in the neighborhood had grown louder. A group of residents walked past my driveway, speaking in low voices. When they saw me, they fell silent. One woman offered a hesitant wave as though acknowledging she might have judged me too quickly. A man who had glared at me 2 days earlier now avoided eye contact completely. Some people weren't ready to accept the truth. But truth was coming, whether they wanted it or not. Around 4 p.m., Helen arrived with 2 additional board members, Linda and Gary. They carried more papers, more evidence, more confusion turning into anger. We sat around my living room as Helen briefed Tom on what had happened during the emergency board meeting. "We voted to suspend Karen's spending authority," Gary said. "But she's furious. She sent an email this morning accusing us of internal betrayal and siding with the enemy." Linda shook her head in disbelief. "She honestly thinks she's the victim. She always thinks that," I muttered. "It's her default setting." Helen sighed, rubbing her temples. "She still believes she can talk her way out of this tonight." Tom leaned back in his chair. "She can try, but facts beat confidence every time." By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, the tension was almost suffocating. The sun was sinking low, streaking the sky in orange and gold. I changed into a clean shirt, slipped the original deed into my jacket pocket, and helped Tom load the binders into his truck. "Ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day she trespassed with a grill and 12 guests," I said. When we pulled up to the community center, the parking lot was overflowing. Cars packed every space, lined the street, even circled the roundabout. It was the largest turnout the neighborhood had ever seen. People streamed into the building in clusters, some whispering anxiously, others looking furious, others simply confused. Inside, every single seat was filled, rows and rows of folding chairs stretching to the back wall. Residents lined the sides of the room, the hallway, even the doorway. Children clung to their parents. Elderly couples whispered to each other. The air buzzed with nervous energy. And then I saw her. Karen. Sitting in the front row, legs crossed, posture stiff as stone, pink suit, immaculate face stretched in a brittle smile. But her eyes were terrified. She tried to hide it, but I'd spent decades reading people in courtrooms. Her confidence was cracked clean through. Beside her sat a man I didn't recognize, slicked back hair, dark suit expression like a coiled spring. Her lawyer, no doubt. On her other side sat a woman in an expensive suit carrying a thin briefcase. Reinforcements. Tom leaned toward me. She brought backup. Good. Means she's scared. Helen walked past Karen on her way to the board table. Karen didn't even look at her. She just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight the muscles twitched. The meeting began with the usual call to order, but the room was so full it was hard to tell whether anyone even heard it. People were shifting in their seats, murmuring eyes darting between Karen and the binder Helen placed on the board table. Finally, Helen cleared her throat. Tonight, before we address regular HOA business, the board has approved a presentation regarding recent concerns raised by residents and community members. Karen shot up from her seat. Point of order. This presentation was not. Tom stepped forward, addressing the room in a calm, steady voice. The board voted 3-2, Miss Morrison. The presentation stands. Karen's mouth snapped shut. Helen looked at me and nodded once. It was time. I walked to the front of the room, binder in hand, the projector screen glowing white behind me. The room fell silent, so silent I could hear my own breathing. I took a deep breath and began. My name is Michael Brennan. Most of you know me as the man who recently inherited the lake at the edge of this community. Tonight, I'm here to show you something important. Something that affects every homeowner in this room. I clicked the first slide. The deed. 1,947. My grandfather's signature. A murmur rippled through the room. I clicked again. The survey map showing the lake stood 200 feet outside HOA boundaries. More murmuring. Then I showed the denial of Karen's petition from the county planning board, signed, dated, official. Gasps. Whispers. Questions. I kept going. I explained the LLC she formed, the $15,000 she took from HOA funds, the forged approval letter, the emails with Harper, the projected profits, the lies, the threats, everything. Every time I clicked the slide, I saw Karen shrink just a little more. When I finished, I stepped aside. Harper stood up next, and the room braced itself for the truth. Harper didn't rush to the front. He walked slowly, deliberately, the way a man does when he knows the room belongs to him. His presence shifted the air. People straightened in their seats, whispers died, even Karen's lawyer stopped scribbling notes. He stood beside me, adjusted his jacket, and looked directly at the crowd. My name is Ron Harper, he said, voice deep and steady. I'm the CEO of Harper Leisure Group, and I'm here tonight because your HOA president defrauded me. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, confusion. Karen nearly shot out of her chair, but her lawyer yanked her arm, forcing her to sit. Harper raised a single hand, and the room quieted instantly. She approached my company 18 months ago, he continued. She pitched a development and exclusive private fishing club. She told me the HOA controlled lake access. She told me the community supported the project. She told me she had county approval. He turned toward Karen. Every word was a lie. Karen finally snapped. She jumped to her feet, face burning red. That's not true. I was working for this community. I was trying to bring value. Sid, her lawyer, hissed under his breath. But Karen wasn't listening. She stormed forward 2 steps, pointing at Harper. He wasn't supposed to be here. This is harassment. You don't belong in this meeting. And you don't belong in that chair, Harper shot back, but here we are. The room packed wall to wall with residents stared with wide eyes. Harper pulled out a document and held it up. This is the letter Karen gave me, claiming the county granted easement rights. It looks official. It uses the county's seal. It references land code statutes. It bears a signature. He lowered it, his expression hardening. But county officials confirmed it's a forgery. She falsified government documents. She used that forgery to get a $200,000 deposit from my company. I watched the anger ripple through the crowd like a wave. Some people put their hands over their mouths. Others exchanged horrified glances. But the worst reaction came from Helen. She stood slowly, her binder pressed to her chest. 200,000, she whispered, barely audible. Harper nodded. Yes, ma'am, and I intend to sue her for every penny. Karen's composure shattered like glass. You can't sue me, she screamed. You can't. I was doing this for the HOA, for the neighborhood. Helen's voice cut through the noise like a knife. You stole from us. The entire room turned toward her. You stole $15,000 of HOA money, Helen said, her voice trembling but fierce. You approved personal expenses without authorization. You fabricated invoices. You lied to your board. You lied to your neighbors. And you used our trust as fuel for your scheme. Karen backed away like each word struck her. That's not true, she sputtered. Then explain this, Helen said, lifting a stack of receipts. Explain why you said you paid for legal consulting from a company that doesn't exist. Explain why you submitted 3 different receipts for the same meeting. Explain why you told the board negotiations with the landowner were ongoing when the county had already denied your petition. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again, each attempt at a defense, collapsing before it formed. Someone in the crowd shouted, "You lied to all of us." Another voice followed, louder, angrier. "Where's our money, Karen?" Karen looked around wildly like a trapped animal. For the first time, she realized the room she once commanded no longer belonged to her. She wasn't the leader tonight. She wasn't even the victim she liked to pretend to be. She was exposed, and everyone saw it. Tom stepped forward next, holding a thick envelope. He cleared his throat. "Copies of every document presented tonight have already been delivered to the district attorney's office," he announced. "This includes evidence of forgery, wire fraud, embezzlement, and criminal trespass." A collective gasp filled the room. Karen froze. "For your information," Tom continued, "criminal charges are already being reviewed." Karen shook her head violently. "You can't do this. You can't. This is my community. I built this HOA." "No," Helen said softly. "You used it." And that was the final blow. Karen's lawyer grabbed her arm again. "We're leaving," he muttered, but Karen jerked away. "No," she screamed. "This isn't over. You're all ungrateful. You needed me." But no one believed her anymore. Not after tonight. 2 men stood from the back neighbors of hers for over 10 years and quietly blocked her path. Not touching her, just standing firm. A symbolic gesture that said everything. "You don't lead us anymore." Karen finally broke. She shoved past her own lawyer, stormed up the aisle, and burst through the double doors, her footsteps echoing into the hallway. The crowd didn't cheer or jeer. They simply watched. They watched the woman who'd controlled their lives for years vanish into the night like a pink blur swallowed by darkness. Silence hung in the room for a long moment. Then slowly the applause began. Not wild, not celebratory. Just a steady, grateful clap that grew and grew until the entire building shook with relief. Some people cried, others hugged. The weight of years of manipulation lifted all at once. Helen dabbed her eyes. Ron Harper extended a hand to me. "Mr. Brennan, thank you." "Thank you for coming," I said. "It won't be the last time," he answered grimly. "I'll see her in court." And he would. The meeting ended with the board officially voting to remove Karen as president and beginning the process of a full forensic audit. Several residents approached me afterward, some apologizing, some thanking me, some sharing how they'd been bullied by Karen for years. By the time I stepped outside into the cool night, the tension in my chest finally eased. Tom joined me, patting my shoulder. "It's over," he said. "Almost," I corrected. "The legal part is next." He chuckled. "You really are your grandfather's grandson." As we walked to the truck, I looked out at the silhouette of the lake under the moon. The surface sparkled faintly calm and constant, untainted by lies, untouched by greed. A symbol of truth. A symbol of family. A symbol of everything worth fighting for. In the weeks that followed, justice unfolded exactly as it should. Karen faced multiple criminal charges. Harper filed his lawsuit. The HOA rebuilt itself under honest leadership. My lake remained exactly what it had always been. A piece of my family's legacy, protected by truth and perseverance. And that's the lesson I want to leave with you today. When someone abuses power, when they weaponize fear, when they twist the truth for their own gain, standing up to them isn't easy. But silence is what keeps people like that in control. Speaking up even when you stand alone is how real change begins. If this story resonated with you, share your own HOA or Karen moment in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're building a community where honesty wins, justice matters, and no bully gets the last word.